In his book Future Wise, Educating Our Children for a Changing World, David Perkins states Mahatma Gandhi surely was one of the most remarkable figures of the 20th century, some would say of the past several centuries. His vision of living amicably together in a complex world not only served the cause of independence in India, but seeded similar actions elsewhere. His commitment to peaceful but assertive political action toward righting wrongs was inspiring and inspiringly strategic. Christopher Emden would most likely concur, as he thinks that one of the reasons why the achievement gap in education continues to widen is because the neo indigenous youth continue to be educated in a manner that does not align with their culture. Emden believes that the Carlisle Indian industrial school system, which utilized a militaristic approach to tame the wild Indian, continues to be in effect today. This approach to education stripped the indigenous people of their culture and traditions, as they were considered primitive and inferior. Emden likens the current education system to the Carlisle school system as he considers it to perpetuate similar ideology, where to be successful means the acculturating of neo indigenous students to white society. His suggestions for righting wrongs is for educators to implement a reality pedagogy, which is teaching and learning based on the reality of students' experiences. To right the wrongs, he recommends the 5 C's of reality pedagogy. First, he mentions cogenitive dialogues. In the classroom, the teacher chooses 4 students to represent different demographics, and the teacher engages with the students outside of the classroom about what their experiences are in the class. The goal of co-generating is to elicit information from the students about the learning environment and gain direct feedback from them on all aspects of the teacher's instruction. In the Teaching for Education guide, Blythe and Associates suggests teachers work together to brainstorm ideas for generative topics, which are interesting to students as they form multiple connections between them and students' experiences both in and out of school. Emden, however, suggests brainstorming with students as it gives them a voice in their own learning. Second is the co-teaching model, where students take on the role of the teacher. Emden suggests giving youth the teacher's manual and a copy of the teacher's lesson plan as a homework assignment and asking the youth to create a lesson plan to teach in the classroom. In this manner, he suggests that the youth will be given the opportunity to have a voice, providing them with agency to inform educators on best practices for teaching urban youth. The third C, cosmopolitanism, which simply means to interrogate the ways youth communicate with each other outside the classroom. Emden suggests teachers utilize those forms of communication within the classroom. The fourth C, context, and Emden cautions educators to be hyper focused on the immediate communities the students are from and to understand that where students are from has value. Who are the people the students look up to in their communities? Invite those people into the school and make them a part of the instruction. Let them infuse their occupations into the subjects the students are learning. And last but not least, the fifth C is content. Emden knows that if content is the first thing educators teach, then they have not given the youth the opportunity to connect. He says, you cannot get to the content if you do not focus on the environment of the classroom. You cannot focus on content if students do not have a voice, if they don't see their life outside the classroom represented inside the classroom. Content knowledge will not be developed if there is no connection to students' background knowledge. In her debut TED Talk presentation, Dr. Rita Pearson notes, every kid needs a champion. And this is what Nadia Lopez is to the students at Mott Hall Bridges in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Lopez chronicles experiences at Mott Hall Bridges, a middle school she founded in a neighborhood that is poverty stricken with the lowest literacy and graduation rates, and one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Brooklyn, a borough of New York City. When photographer Brandon Stanton of Humans of New York encountered one of his students and asked, who influenced him the most in his life, he replied, his school principal, Miss Lopez. What resulted from this episode of Humans of New York, a Facebook blog, was Miss Lopez and her student being thrust into the national limelight. The photographer created a fundraiser for the school, which raised more than $1.4 million. Target donated over $100,000 worth of iPads and other electronic devices for the school. The pair appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres' television show as well as Good Morning America, and they received an invitation to the White House where they met with President Obama. According to Lopez, she wrote, The Bridge to Brilliance, How One Woman and One Community Are Inspiring the World, to share the work that educators do in classrooms on a day-to-day basis, usually getting no recognition for their hard work. She knows that added pressures like standardized exams, systematic oppression within the education system, as well as the effects of poverty on children, makes the task of educating students very challenging. Likewise, another goal she has is to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline, opening the school to close the prison. Working as a special education teacher, Lopez learned the importance of getting to know the whole child. She writes, I knew firsthand the crucial role teachers play in the lives of children, not just intellectually, but also emotionally. Likewise, Dr. James Comer, professor of child psychiatry at Yale University, affirms, no significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. From the first day of school, some administrators expect teachers to have full lessons planned and students already working on the curriculum. However, students' emotional well-being is equally important as their educational well-being. Furthermore, according to Maslow's hierarchy of need, if basic needs are not met, it is difficult for individuals to meet their full potential. Therefore, it is extremely important for educators to know their audience, particularly those from underserved communities. Lopez adds, if you're going to save lives, you have to give children the right spaces, resources, cues, and support for them to share, figure themselves out, and then learn. Building genuine relationships mean accepting students for who they are and not wanting to change them into who society expects them to become. Blythe acknowledges that the development of understanding is a continuous process. She continues, understanding is being able to carry out a variety of actions or performances that show one's grasp of a topic and at the same time advance it. During an observation of the math teacher trying to teach students the concept of finding the volume of a rectangle, Lopez noticed that the students were not following. After the observation, she had the teacher explain it to her so that she understands, as math was not one of her strengths. She reports that instead of making the concept an abstraction, he asked a series of questions that took her through a visual exercise of pouring water into a fish tank, which allowed her to connect the concept to something concrete. He went back and retaught the lesson with 100% understanding, with students being able to connect the concept to other real-life situations. Blythe states, understanding is being able to carry out a variety of actions or performances that show one's grasp of a topic and at the same time advance it. Although Emden's and Lopez's books are not guides, there were important nuggets that align with Blythe and Associates. For instance, Emden's co-generative talks is similar to generative topics. Lopez expects her teachers to teach students so that they understand what they are learning, and she also expects her teachers to reflect on their practices. Both Emden and Lopez were very attentive to the importance of truly knowing students, as it is the prelude to them learning content.